Episode 3 of Uncurated and On View is here, and it's time to let our floral flag fly. That's me, Lisa Zaruka, and this week a new piece emerged while painting was fully underway on the larger folk art floral. But before I dive into the activity in the atelier, I need to back up because both pieces are flower paintings with intentionally broad storylines. So you may be asking, what can you say with flowers? What kind of story can you tell with just one or a few flowers? And going beyond their basic meanings. For example, red roses mean passionate love, white lilies have significant spiritual symbolism. Those are examples of florography, which ties flowers to emotions and sentiments from the sender. But I won't be talking about that today. Instead, I'd like to briefly explain how I intentionally use flowers through a heavily personified lens in my paintings. Through their delicate, rugged, or colorful nature, I can use them to communicate emotions, themes, and stories about humanity without the trappings of our genders, faces, and figures. So if the primary subjects of an artwork are stripped of faces, hair, eyes, body parts, and our own critiques and biases, what is left? My perspective of flowers is different. I view their anatomy similarly to ours, and I can probably blame my love of the talking flowers from Alice in Wonderland for this, where each flower has a distinctive personality and behaviors. Here are a few examples of the physical parallels I draw between people and flowers. The flower's stem is its legs and core body or figure, and this shows overall strength or weakness. We can see whether the stem is sturdy and anchored, fully supporting the blossom and able to carry nutrients from the ground, or if it's flimsy, dry, and weak, barely able to hold its own head up. The leaves and greenery reflect the flower's basic state of health, whether its leaves are richly green with lots of leaves outstretched, absorbing nutrients to support its overall life, or whether the leaves are sickly, yellow, eaten by pests, or diseased. The center of the flower, along with the petals, work together to act as the face, head, or eye, depending on how you want to view it. The petals, beauty and life itself, intended to attract pollinators for reproduction, etc. We can see whether the petals are outstretched and very open, exposing the delicate center of the flower, a vulnerable spot, or whether they're contracted and closed off around the center, or whether the petals are tight in a bud, showing its infancy, or blowing away in the wind, showing its life cycle is ending. I purposely pose the flowers in a way to give them additional intended meaning to tie it all together. So here's some past examples of my work, their titles, and their core themes or storylines. Poppy cultural icon, longing and yearning. Their Royal Majesties, alignment, yin and yang. A waltz in blue, trying on new and unconventional colors. The garden, Renaissance, spring, growth, and youth. The toll, autumn, death, glimmers of hope. Lore of the peony, ancestral roots. Poppy's serenade, goodbye. Command the room, tradition, and breaking with tradition. I'll probably get into these pieces more some other time, but it's important to explain the perspective I offer and to show that these pieces aren't strictly decor. There is intentional depth. Moving back into the atelier, as I mentioned in a prior episode, I like to have multiple pieces working at once. And as I started painting the folk art florals, I began drawing the next piece, which took only about 8 hours to sketch freehand, which is really good. Then using a fine tip marker, I reinforced the outlines since they will ultimately serve as the outlines on the painting surface. I then made cuts with a jigsaw, glued them to the frame base, and it's ready to go for when I'm paused on the primary piece, which happened pretty quickly this week. Let's get back to that one. I worked on the flower to the far left, choosing medium-toned thicker opalescent reds for the petals with a fiery lemon and yellow center. And I've already touched on my unfair favoritism of my red colors. However, I purposely used a duller, less dynamic effect on the flower to set it apart from the other two. You'll see as it comes together, it will stand out for the wrong reasons. That's intentional. I then carefully started the background, which is a dark green, and I did it in small sections. Darker backgrounds are tricky, so I take my time here. And I found that as it came together, my what could go wrong neurosis was triggered. This doesn't happen often, but it comes about when the paint wants to remind me that while it's beautiful, it's difficult and I can't always control it. Once it's on the surface, if I don't catch it immediately, I can't easily get it to come off, and not without scarring the surface, which is exactly what happened here. And unfortunately, you can't cover it up. It's done. So with a larger piece like this one, there's more pressure. I do my best to get it right on the first application. And fortunately, in this case, since I had just started a new piece concurrently, I could put some space between my brain and this primary painting just by switching to the other project for a little bit. But these two projects feel really good to me in composition, colors, and the narratives. And there's one more thing from this week. It's a programming note. Two things, actually. This series, much like these two projects, is a work in progress, aka WIP, WIP. You'll see that very common across artists. The evolution of this series continues, and this week, after trying to figure out what my problem is with wide angle filming, I decided it wasn't a right fit. For now, I'd like to keep this content in a portrait or vertical layout to keep it consumable primarily on phones and tablets. Practically speaking, I'm already set up to film this way, but also it keeps the focus tight on the actual work happening versus the atelier itself in the periphery. I know that's not what YouTubers do or love from creatives, but until Netflix comes calling, I think it's the right call. And then also I wanted to add, I'm going to start doing live feeds. I think I'm either going to do it on YouTube or TikTok. I'm not sure where yet, but I will keep you posted. But I'm looking at Thursdays in the early to mid-evening. So as I get that date together and start planning it officially, I will let you guys know. Next week, more progress across the board, and I may start, like I said, doing an actual feed next week. So hit like and subscribe if you want to see which project is further along next episode, and have an awesome week.